Hey, good afternoon. This is Jim Mather. I'm talking about a subject that I frequently write on in some of my blogs, Jim Mather at blogspot.com. But today I want to talk to you about a little bit about some hindrances to intimacy and relationship. You know, I believe that we're all born for relationship. That's one of the main reasons we're on the planet, if you will, is to both love God and love our neighbor as we love ourselves. But it appears that there's nothing more difficult to really have intimate relationships. And intimacy, I would define as being loved for who you really are. But sometimes we sabotage our relationships, and we have within our personalities, within our souls, because of injury, because of harm, because of things that have been said or done to us, that really sabotage the thing that we desire so very much. And there are three things that I want to talk to you just briefly today about, and that is things that we do because of insecurity, of not knowing the value of who we really are. The first thing is that a truly insecure person does is they hide who they really are. And when a person is unable to reveal their true self, if you will, intimacy right from the starting line of the relationship dies. And I think it's a frequent thing in modern times. We always are trying to present our best self, if you will. We have image at the center instead of the real person. We wear a lot of different masks. So identity masks, I call that identity masks. They both confuse and they control and they conceal. Let me say that again. Identity masks confuse, they attempt to control, and they conceal. And the idea of intimacy is that you're willing to reveal who you really are. So if you're wearing a mask because of insecurity, it's over right from the beginning. So it's almost like we have to go a little deeper. We have to do some self-examination about, do we really have an understanding that we're made by God, that we're worthy of love for who we really are? Man, this is at the center. And if you're willing to take some time, I recommend a few scriptures that you take a look at. Is Genesis chapter 1 and verse 27, Psalm 139 verses 13 and 14. Just take a look at those. The second thing is, the first thing again is, a truly insecure person hides who they really are. And this is, I think, the vestige of sin, the vestige or the remnant, or even the echo of what happened in the very beginning of time. In terms of relationships, go back to Genesis chapter 1 through Genesis chapter 3, and you see that the first thing we do when we have this sense of shame in relationship is we begin to hide. Okay, the second point. Insecure people tend to hold on to what they should let go of, or what they should release. Oh, man, this is just heartbreaking for me to see so many people entering into relationships under false pretenses, pretending, gaming, and then clearly establishing a poor foundation. And then because of insecurity, like you don't think you can get a holy and a healthy and a satisfying relationship. You hold on to it, even though it's damaging both of you right from the get-go, and you linger and you hold on, and abuse occurs. There's a sense of imprisonment, a control, lack of satisfaction. Intimacy is not happening, and yet you won't let go. It's a great tragedy. Let me just read something that I wrote here. It says, when we don't believe we are worthy of the purest forms of love, we often build fractured and damaged relationships. So we accept abuse, we accept injury, we accept harm as some kind of a norm. It's not. It's not normal for you to feel emotionally abused, verbally abused, physically abused. That's not normal. That's abnormal. If you're in that type of relationship, you need to reevaluate very, very quickly and get out of harm's way as quickly as you possibly can. Brokenness breeds more brokenness, not wholeness. So you've got to step back before you attempt to move forward in intimacy with another human being. You've got to step back and begin to work on yourself, and begin to try to connect with the God of unconditional love. This is the source and the bedrock of satisfaction relationship is just being loved right now for who you are in the midst of failure, in the midst of just all the stuff that we carry. See, healing doesn't come by accident. It comes in the context of light and love and acceptance right now. And God begins to accept you and renew your thoughts and give you hope for healthy relationships, which are sustainable over time. You can't expect hurt people, broken people, to be able to heal you. So there needs to be a trinity of relationships. I love the writing of Gary Small. He's got a great book out there, which I'll probably be teaching on in my home next Tuesday night. Going to take out some principles from the classic book by Gary Smalley called The DNA of Relationships. And we'll talk about how the three primary relationships come together to bring security, to bring health, to bring wholeness. The DNA of relationship, Gary Small talking about how our love for God, our love for ourselves, and our love for others need to be this constant flow. And you can't have one without the other. This is the challenge. A lot of people they want to fragment their relationships and say, it's just me and God. I don't need people. Or I don't need God. I just need my one true love. That's all I need. I'm like, come on. Or I just need to love myself. That's all I need. No, you need all three. Because this is the reality. You cannot deny the reality of life and expect to also have wholeness. So we'll talk about that more. And if you're in the Mobile area, I encourage you to come by and see us every Tuesday night at 7:00. We're doing a series of talks on the topic of Relationships 101. I live right next to a university. And, I've always thought, gosh, if we could get freshmen, if I could have had this when I was a freshman in college, and just give me the basics, give me the fundamentals. And over time, perhaps with God's help and others' help and myself being honest and transparent, I can grow in the health of my relationships. So the area we're talking just today about insecurity, though, and how that hinders this sense of deep connectedness or intimacy, if you will, with God, with myself, and with others, and more particular, and with other people. This is the big struggle I'm seeing in people. And you name the age, you go from teenager all the way through the life spectrum, and men and women are really struggling in the area of intimacy if they're going to be honest about their relationship. It's not what they sense and desire as fully whole and fully satisfying. And so insecurity is a big one. We just talked about number one was hiding who you really are, trying to present an image. This is the whole era of Instagram and social media, where we're just projecting what we expect others to want, which is constantly changing. So it's a never-ending chase for something that's a mirage, really. So the second thing is insecure tend to hold on to what they should release. And finally, the third thing is insecure people resist what they most desperately need. They resist. It's not just holding on. The very thing that you desire is oftentimes closer at hand than you realize. But because you're holding on to the dysfunctional, the diseased, and the dysfunctional, that which is whole and healthy is beyond your reach because you're resisting it. I can remember doing this as a young man. I was in the United States Air Force, and I was going through some tough times. My third year, I was about just shy of my 21st birthday, and it was just a year from hell. And it was largely because of my own doing. I was extremely prideful, arrogant, and I was scaring people by my behavior, and I was scaring myself. And but I was still born for relationships. So I was trying to isolate myself. I was in a dysfunctional relationship when I was 20 years old, and dating someone I had no business dating. I don't dare want to go into the details of that, but hurting and harming her, hurting and harming myself. And so that obviously didn't go well. And I can remember like it was yesterday, that deep sense of loneliness that was in my soul. but not knowing how to resolve that. Ultimately, because of people loving me and praying for me and the grace of God, I experienced forgiveness, if you will, in the midst of a relational crisis, mostly with myself. I just said, God, help me. A very simple prayer. Maybe you're struggling today in a deep way. And all this, maybe you've read several books. You hear a lot about people talk about relationship. Maybe even what I'm saying to you today is just, yeah, that sounds great, Jim, but I'm so burned out. I'm so disappointed. I'm so hurt. I don't even know if I want to have a relationship. Well, I can relate to that. So maybe the answer for you to not listen to me today is just to pray, God, if you exist. And God's okay if you've got struggles, if you're doubting today. Maybe you're just doubting. If God's a God of love, why have I been so screwed over in relationship? It's a good question. And God can handle that question. But you got to ask it. God, please help me to even just want to believe that there is intimacy, that there is hope for satisfying relationship, that I can myself move forward out of my dysfunction of always being anxious, always being fearful, always working to my own detriment in my daily relational life. But the third thing is in this area of resistance. Let me just read a few things to you about that. Because insecure people don't believe they can be truly loved for who they really are in reality, they create pseudo relationships or fake relationships based on falsehoods and deceptions. So we just go through the motions. We dress, we act in a particular way. But in the process, we actually lose and we begin to forget who we really are. We take on a whole nother personality and we drive that relational car so far down the road of deception that we don't even remember who we are. And nobody else knows who we are. Maybe someone has challenged you. Maybe you begin to challenge yourself today. Who am I really? Who am I really? You lose your way when you begin to reject reality and you try to just live for someone else's fantasy. Folks, this is what pornography has done to our society. When you try to satisfy someone else's fantasy, you've left reality and you've harmed your soul. And you've got to get back and cut the ties, the soul ties, to people that are trying to ultimately make you someone else. And they can never do it, and you can never become that person either. So we demand of human beings what they in themselves are incapable. Unconditional love that will never end. This whole concept of soulmates, it's a very dicey proposition. That it's one particular human being. It's a great fantasy in fictional films, and it makes for good romance novels. But putting all of your relational needs on one finite, imperfect human being is a setup for a massive bridge failure. You're both gonna collapse into the river of dismay at some point. Not that to say that you might have a great person in your life. I do. I've had a wonderful marriage. I'm going to be married 33 years, June 29th of this year, 2018. Praise God. And Mary's fantastic. If you know my wife, Mary, she's awesome. And I'm just fortunate to be able to call her my wife and my life partner. But Mary's not perfect, and neither am I. And so we know that to stay healthy, we've got to have an active, vibrant relationship with God where we're asking for forgiveness, we're asking for insight, we're asking for help, we're asking for growth. And we have that to give and to receive, not just for our marriage, but for all of our relationships. Well, these are just a few of my thoughts for today. I hope this inspires you, and I hope you'll tune into further videos. This is enough talking for today. I hope that intimacy is something you won't let go of, that you'll pursue it, but in the context of loving God, loving others, and loving yourself. Have a great day. Let me know what you think about my rambling thoughts today. I wish you well.